Today we talk about Fuentes de Onoro 1811. This is a French war game published by Victis. It is not one of their magazine games. It is a full game that is published independently by Victis. It is a game by Frederick Bray, the designer of several war games in the Lion and the Sword series, and he's also the designer of games in the Days of Glory series. And this is a game that belongs to that series, that belongs to that system, a system that covers battles of the Napoleonic Age. In particular, in this package here, you will find several battles revolving around the last duel between Massena and Wellington in Portugal. You have a short intro scenario that takes place mainly at night, so you can only see how the system works with the special modifications that apply at night, and that can be used as an intro to the scenario. It is played on a specific and smaller map. Then you have the main course of the game, which is played on a larger map, and it is the Battle of Fuentes de Onoro. This battle comes with 3 scenarios, one for each day of the battle as it historically happened, and then you also have a campaign game or a campaign scenario that combines the 3 scenarios and allows you to play all of the 3 days of the battle. And then you also have a last scenario which is played again on a separate map, a smaller map, and it is a sort of epilogue for the game. 2-player game, but absolutely solitaire friendly. Game comes in this folder here, sort of like cardboard folder with the rules of the series and the scenarios in French and in English. Then you have the maps, and then you have the counters, and I've added this GMT counter tray to organize the counters. As you can see, they fit in it very well. So here I am today, telling you a little bit about the Days of Glory system in general, and then telling you about my impressions about the system and also about the way in which the system works in this specific game. The first thing to do at the beginning of a turn is to determine tactical groups. Tactical groups are represented by units belonging to the same formation, and formations are indicated by the color of the band on top of the counter, like green and red. But to form a tactical group, the units of a formation must also be within 2 axes from one another. That means that those units can chain the formation. The total extension of the formation can be of any extension as long as the units are no more than 2 axes from one another. So for example, this formation also forms a tactical group. These 4 units all belong to the same formation, but they form 2 different tactical groups. This is one and this is another one. And this is important because when it comes to receiving orders, each tactical group counts as independent. An order will reach only one tactical group. After you determine the tactical groups, you assign orders. Each side has a commander-in-chief, in this case Wellington, that can assign a certain number of orders, the number printed there, and this is the radius, the distance that can be reached by the orders. So Wellington can issue 4 orders to 4 tactical groups up to 4 axes away. You only need to have 1 unit of the tactical group within that range. So for example, Wellington could issue an order to this group, and the order would apply to all of these units. If Wellington wants to send orders to these 2 groups, it is possible, they are within range, but it costs 2 orders. Actually, in this phase, you should place your orders face down, because most likely not all of your groups around your leader will be able to receive orders, and the ones that do not receive orders receive this other marker here, but the opponent doesn't know exactly which units have received orders and which units are without orders. Each formation is activated when the corresponding activation chit is drawn from the activation cup. Each formation usually has 2 chits in the cup, but there may be cases in which a group only has 1 chit. When that is drawn, then the group can activate, and what the group and the units belonging to the tactical group can do really depend on the status of the group, whether the group has orders or not. A group that has orders can move and then attack without penalty. Units that do not have orders can be activated at a reduced rate. For example, artillery units without orders can fire instead of moving, whereas artillery with orders can fire and then move. Units without orders move at half of their regular speed. They have their movement allowance reduced by half. And also, another important thing is that units that are attacking in shock combat without orders must pass an engagement test to see if they actually are able to enter combat. All units have an engagement number, which is that small black number there. You roll a die and a d10, and you need to roll that number or less, in which case a unit without orders can attack in shock combat. A unit that doesn't have orders and fails the engagement test cannot enter shock combat. However, and this is a super cool thing, if you have a formation where there are tactical groups without orders, you can try and see if the leader of that formation is able to issue orders. Each tactical cheat has a number here that represents the ability of the leader of that formation to act independently. If you decide to try to activate the leader, then, I mean the local leader, the leader of the group, then you roll 1d10. If you roll the rating number or less, then the group that doesn't have orders acts exactly as if it had orders. So it can move, it can attack, it doesn't have any restrictions. However, if a group without orders is trying to activate through its own leader and fails to do so, then the group is stuck there. It cannot do anything but rallying. When a formation is activated, the first units to act in that formation are artillery units. They can fire before they move or instead of moving, depending on their order situation. An artillery unit that fires must take into account all of these possible modifiers, such as the unit's fire strength, which is that number there. It's in parentheses as a reminder that that fire strength cannot be used in shock combat. And then there are, of course, other modifiers based, for example, on combined fire, range, the terrain of the target, things like that. You roll 1d10, you apply all the possible modifiers, and you look at the results here in the fire table. The result may be nothing if it is under 9. It may force the unit of the opponent to take a cohesion test. A cohesion test is performed by rolling 1d10 and comparing the result to the cohesion value of the unit, which is that number there at the bottom. If the number rolled is equal to or less than that number, then the cohesion test is passed, otherwise it is failed. In case a unit fails a cohesion test, it is flipped to its disordered side. It will remain in this state until it rallies, and a unit that is in disorder has several penalties, the most severe of which probably is the fact that it cannot engage in shock combat if infantry, or it cannot charge if cavalry. At the end of the activation of a formation, you can rally disordered units that did not move and that are not adjacent to enemy units. You roll 1d10, again you're trying to pass a cohesion test, and this time if the cohesion test is passed, the unit is returned to its full side. In any case, other results, you may have a D as a result. In this case, the unit is simply disordered without the cohesion test. Routed, a routed unit receives the routed marker and starts moving towards the edge of the board, trying to leave the board. Each turn, the unit will automatically perform route movement, and after the route movement, at the end of the activation, you can try to rally that unit, in which case it will go back to just being disordered. But these are the possible effects that come from fire. After artillery fire, activated units can move, and they can move up to their full movement allowance, bottom right corner, if they have orders, otherwise only half of that. Units project a zone of control in the two hexes that they are facing, the two hexes in front of them. And units must always be facing one of the 6 corners in the hex in which they are. Facing has no effect on movement, but once a unit stops moving, it has to retain that facing until the next time that the unit is activated, or until a game effect may cause that unit to change facing. Units that move in the zone of control of an opponent must end movement immediately, so that unit just entered the zone of control of that unit. It cannot move further. But then units that ended their movement adjacent to opponents may engage in shock combat. They can do it easily, normally, if they have orders. Otherwise, they have to pass an engagement test. Cavalry units in this game can also attempt to launch charges. There are specific rules for this, and actually a considerable portion of the rulebook is about charges and rules that come with that. Counter charges, limitations to movement, possibility to respond to charges with a square for infantry, but charges, well, briefly said, include a movement of cavalry units against units of the opponent, and those units, again, after they follow all the possible rules and exceptions that they had to follow, may be able to engage in combat and to get the charge bonuses, again, if they have orders or if they were able to pass an engagement test. Oh, well, there are also other types of artillery fire that I didn't mention before. They just came to mind after seeing this situation. Artillery can fire regularly at the beginning of its own activation, or it can fire as a reaction fire when a unit of the opponent moves in one of the two frontal axes of that unit. Also, an artillery unit can fire using counter battery when that unit is the target of the artillery attack of a unit of the opponent. And depending on the situation, different modifiers will apply to the resolution of that fire. Shock combat and charges are resolved on the same table. They just may benefit from and be affected by different types of modifiers. But actually some modifiers will apply to all situations. You have to take into account the odds ratio, that is the ratio between the strength of the attacker and that of the defender. Strength is that number there, bottom left corner. Cohesion, the difference between the best cohesion rating of the attacker and the best cohesion rating of the defender. That difference becomes a modifier that works for the side that has the highest cohesion. If this unit is attacking this unit here, then cohesion 5 versus cohesion 4, this unit has +1. If this unit attacks that unit, then this unit has -1. Terrain, of course, has a role in here. Attacking units that are routed is better for you. Position, it is good if you can attack the defender from one of its rear hexes. Even better if you can combine a frontal attack with a rear attack. And then cavalry has its own sets of modifiers that apply when cavalry is performing shock or when cavalry is performing a charge. You put together all the modifiers that apply, and then you look at this table, you roll 1d10, apply the modifiers, and you just apply the results, the effects for the defender and for the attacker. Common results are to be forced to move a hex away, and then either to be disordered or to have to pass a cohesion test. If failed, the unit is disordered, or to be disordered and then to have to pass a cohesion test. If failed, then the unit affected by the disorder must also move away by 1x. I am absolutely awestruck by the system in general, and how the system works in this particular package. I love pretty much everything in it. I love the command system. It is more abstract, more linear, more streamlined than other games where you have a chain of command. Also the Napoleonic games that may have more detail, maybe more realistic, but also they bring more bookkeeping and more procedures with them. Here things are extremely streamlined. Sure, the commanders of the formations are abstracted by the activation counters that you pull from the activation cup. Only the commander-in-chief is actually, only the position of commander-in-chief is actually indicated on the map. But still, the fact that the different commanders have different activation ratings, if you are trying to activate them independently, that already brings flavor. Not only that, but actually each commander is represented by two activation chits, and they often have different activation ratings. That means that the self-confidence of the commander of a certain formation may change throughout the game. There are moments in which the commander feels more self-confident, more self-reliant, and other times in which that same commander may not feel as inclined as he was before to take matters into his own hands. And I have to tell you, I like incredibly the continuous decision that you have between activating a tactical group without orders for a limited activation and you get something out of it, it's not that great, or on the other hand to gamble it all to try to activate that group fully to give it a full activation, but on the other hand if that gamble doesn't pay off then the group gets absolutely nothing, you don't get to do anything with that group. That continuous choice, I would almost say that continuous temptation that almost torments you because you're always faced with that possibility. Should I do it? Should I not do it? That one thing to me gives a spin to pretty much everything else in the design. Everything else in the design really benefits, I believe, from this continuous choice that you have. And then other parts of the game to me work really well. I like the combat system. It is more intuitive and probably smoother than it may look like at first, especially when you look at that long list of modifiers that I showed you. There are enough modifiers to make the experience detailed, very thematic, and to present you with many options and ways in which you can create a strategy around the attempt to grab as many positive modifiers as you can, but at the same time the system of modifiers is not such that creates a burden on the overall experience and the game becomes too much a mathematical affair. You will not find yourself browsing the lists of modifiers, just make sure that you can get two of them rather than one. The situation makes sense thematically. This is a system that I'm just enjoying. I'm enjoying greatly. I wish I had played more Napoleonic games in my life so I could compare this game with those. I wish I knew more about the Napoleonic Age so I could, create a better commentary about the historicity of the game. But I can definitely compare this game with other games that I play, with other war games that I play, and I can tell you in terms of fun factor, this game scores really high. Fuentes de Onoro, 1811, and Days of Glory system. Two great things. I really love both. Get this game, give it a try, or try some of the games in the series. I think you may like it. In any case, if you follow my videos, rest assured that you will definitely see more videos from me about games in the Days of Glory system, and possibly, and I would say more, probably, who knows, more praise for games in this really outstanding system.